Hey guys, welcome to today's show of the Men Made for More podcast. Today we're talking about the often asked question of how many days per week do I work out? Most people are confused when it comes to how many days per week to work out. Is more better? Can you get the same results in less time? Where's the sweet spot when it comes to how many days to work out? There is no one size fits all approach when it comes to the ideal amount of days to work out. But when you can find the ideal amount for you and your specific situation, you can get better results in less time, which I think is something that we're all after. And if you've ever felt confused about how many days per week to work out, you're definitely not alone. This is a common struggle for guys looking to get in better shape, whether it's losing fat, building muscle, or improving their performance in a given sport or activity. If you work out too much, you run the risk of overtraining and injury. But if you work out too little, you minimize your potential to progress when it comes to building muscle and losing fat. If how many days per week you're working out is not something that you've given some conscious thought to, it's time to start. This is an overlooked variable to maximizing results and progress, and more is often not better, as people commonly believe. And I know how overwhelming it can be trying to dial in your workouts and your health. There are so many factors, and it gets confusing in a hurry. Don't worry, though, this is something that doesn't have to be overly complex, and I help coaching clients simplify these things all the time with some clear and easy to follow strategies. And I'd say 80% of those clients that I get to work with for our health and performance coaching fall into one of two categories. They're either currently working out at too low or too high of a frequency. And very few have actually found that sweet spot when it comes to the right frequency. The funny thing is, though, whatever side they're on, when we start working together, both are lacking the same thing, and that is a clear plan. If you fall into working out too few days a week, you probably aren't fully sure of what you should be doing. So you end up skipping on the gym more often than you should. So I hear things all the time like, well, I did this for a while, but I wasn't really sure if it was working. So I moved to trying this for a while, but wasn't really sure about that either. So now I'm just not really doing as much aside from going to the gym here and there, but I don't really have a plan when I go there. And this is so ineffective and such a thing that keeps people from reaching their goals because consistency is where all the magic happens in your training towards your goals. And if you're not consistently following a program that challenges you and you're not challenging your body enough, you're not giving it at least that minimum amount of stress and challenge that it needs, then you're going to continue to fall short of the results that you're hoping for, whether that's muscle gain, whether that's fat loss, whether that's just looking and feeling good, or whether that's getting better at a sport. If you're not giving enough time to see the progress and you're not spending enough time to create true change, you're going to keep bouncing around from thing to thing and just start to kind of get discouraged because you'll think, well, nothing really works. Everything I've tried doesn't seem to hold, when really it might just be an issue of not giving it enough time, not trusting the plan enough to see it through and to see the long-term change that's capable. But if you fall into the category of working out too many days a week, don't assume you fully understand what you're doing either. And you're not necessarily doing everything you can to get the results you want. So many people fall into the mindset of more is better, but really this is just poor planning. Often the guys I get to work with are either, they might be going to a group class gym and just showing up every day and following the workouts that are planned. And they probably wear a badge of honor of more equals better, faster results. Or some people are truly just misguided. And unfortunately, wherever you're at, these things are misguided and they're just not true. Working out too many days per week can actually slow your progress down. And I think you guys need to hear that again. Working out too many days per week can actually slow your progress down. And there's a lot of problems that come along with this. And if you guys haven't checked out the recovery podcast I put out earlier this week, that's a good starting point to dial some of those things in to make sure that you're getting the most out of your training. But some other reasons is our hormones play a big role in our fat loss and our muscle gain. We know that through, you guys all hear about testosterone and wanting to build in those areas, and we're regulated by our hormones. And if we're pushing too much training on it and not giving the recovery it needs, then we're actually diminishing some of those hormones that help with building muscle and burning fat. We're raising the ones that help to store fat, things like cortisol or other similar hormones. And if you're struggling with some of these things and you're addressing everything else and you're thinking that more is better and you're holding on to some fat or not building your muscle or not performing the way you want, then it might be due to working out too many days. Overtraining is a real thing, and it's something that is not beneficial. We get to a certain point where we can't get the results that we're after. And so much of this is regulated by our hormones and our nervous system. So our nervous system as well, if you're always in that heightened state, if you're always trying to work out, always try to be on, and you're not doing the we call rest and digest side of your nervous system, so you're not taking time to recover and rebuild, then it's gonna really harm your progress. So what should you do instead? And how do you find the sweet spot in your training? So one thing you'll notice, and one thing I'm guessing you're all waiting for, is for me to give you a number of exactly how many days a week you should be working out. And unfortunately, if that's all you're waiting for, that's something I won't be doing today. But instead, I want to give you 5 things to consider when you're trying to find your ideal number of days to work out, because this thing is so individualized. So first off, why are you training? Is it to lose fat? Is it to build muscle? Is it for stress relief because you just enjoy it? Knowing your goal is important because sometimes less can be more. If you're trying to lose fat, doing HIIT workouts over and over again is not necessarily the best way to do it. Some low, slow activity, some even something as simple as a walk or a hike in the morning fasted, some of these things carry more benefit than simply pushing HIIT workouts and trying to think of simply a calories in, calories out equation. And that's a dangerous place to go. We can get into that in a different episode if it's something you guys are interested in, but there's so much more to building muscle and losing fat than that. But if your goal are any of these things, if it is for stress relief or because you just enjoy it, that'll affect how many days you want to work out. If it's a big stress reliever for you, then you might require more frequency during the week, more days, if that's a major way you manage stress. But that comes with a consequence too. If you're stretching into more days, then the intensity has to be lower. So if you're trying to push the intensity high and push the amount of days high, you're setting yourself up for potential failure. So if you do it for mental reasons or because you enjoy it, then that's fine. You can add more days in, but make sure you're decreasing the volume or the intensity to make sure that you're able to sustain it long term. Or it might be a matter of finding some other stress relief methods that work for you and not just assuming that that's the only one that works. Second thing to consider here, what style of workouts are you participating in? If it's HIIT style, which is high intensity interval training versus long and slow running versus pushing yourself running versus heavy lifting, how much volume are you doing? How much rest are your body parts getting? If we're talking things like split training where you're doing lower body, upper body, or are you doing full body every day? All these things will play a role. I think in general, the harder you're going, the harder you're pushing yourself, the more full body stuff you're doing, the less frequency of days you need. So if you're doing super hard full body stuff, 2, maybe 3 days at the most might be enough. But if you're going to the gym and you're hitting more mobility work, some corrective work, some maybe one heavy lift on a lower one day, one heavy on an upper one day, and you're managing your volume, you might be able to get away with more days. So that really comes down to how well your program is structured. And that's why you'll hear me harp on it all the time. And that's something that I do for a living as well, is program out people's exercise programs. For the clients we get to work with in our coaching program, this is one of the most important things because intelligent programming is the key to achieving these results. And you can't just haphazardly throw stuff at the wall and hope that you see better improvements. So knowing all these things, it's not a straightforward answer, and programming is complicated. It's not a matter of just following some online program and wondering why you're not getting results. There's so many things we have to keep tweaking with this, and that's something to consider when you're choosing how many days to work out. Third point here, how hard are you really going in your training? And this is something physical, it's something psychological, but are you really pushing yourself to your max? And this is an honest question. If you're going to the gym and you're truly redlining, you don't need to be going to the gym as much. If you're going to push to that red line and you enjoy doing that zone of a lot of discomfort, that's fine, but you don't need to be doing this 6 or 7 days a week. But if you think you're going hard and you reflect on it, and maybe you're like, I'm probably not really pushing. I'm maybe at a 3 or 4 out of 10 on a scale of how hard I'm going, then you might be able to add some extra days in. If you prefer the more days at a lower intensity, that's fine. If you prefer pushing it, just don't try and combine the two and think that's better. Fourth point here, this one's huge. What else is going on in your life? How's your stress? How's your sleep? How's your nutrition? Are you traveling? How are you recovering? All these things factor in how much training we can handle. The poorer we manage some of these things, and if we neglect these things, then we're going to set ourselves up for injury if we're trying to work above that, if we're trying to add more days or more intense days. So think when you have more going on in your life, think less intense sessions, think maybe less frequent sessions and more just light activity, low intensity activity. If you're at a season of life where you can really focus on training and there's not much stress, you're able to sleep well, you got really good nutrition, go for it. You can push more days, you can push harder days in those cases. But again, we can't start mixing these things. And for most people I work with, a lot of the clients I get to work with, stress and sleep and nutrition and these things are not easily managed. Busy lifestyles don't foster that. And trying to add a lot of high intensity to that is not the recipe for setting yourself up for long-term results. Last point here, and this one's simple and straightforward, but extremely important. Are you making progress? Are you feeling good? And do you feel like this is sustainable? No matter what else, above all the other strategies, you should be making progress. You should feel good and you feel like it's sustainable. And if you don't, you need to adjust it somehow. So if you feel like, and this can be on both ends, if you feel like 2 days a week is not enough to get the results you want, if you feel like you're not able to manage stress you want, you might need to increase some days. If you're training 5 or 6 days a week right now and you're like, I don't see how I can keep this up as work gets busy, or maybe as a family grows, or some of these different things, those are all things to keep in mind. And those above all are super important because it should be sustainable and you should be making progress. If you're not, you need to change the plan and find a plan that works for you. So if you haven't evaluated why you're working out the number of days you are, I strongly encourage you to consider doing so. And this is an overlooked variable that can make or break your training. Too much or too little, and you'll limit the potential you have to reach your training goals. So imagine reaching all your goals, making steady progress without setbacks, and feeling great in your training. Finding the sweet spot for the number of days to work out is just one piece of the puzzle to getting there, but this is one that can't be overlooked. And I know this didn't give you the straight answer you were hoping for, but this is something that we spend months fine-tuning and optimizing for the coaching clients that I get to work with. So it definitely would not be fair to give a blanket statement that could be setting you up for failure, or at the very least misguide you in what's best for you. If you're looking for more specific guidance though, head on over to the link in the show notes to check out the Men Made for More coaching program. I only take on a few new coaching clients every month, but head on over to that page and apply to set up a free coaching call. Even if we're not a good fit for working together, I'd be happy to talk more and help give you some guidance on how to best reach your goals. Thanks for listening, guys. Take this, apply it, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.